The Gloriana set by ThebeMoon, read by LMX Mabella. Chapter 9. Gryffindor Party, Part 1.
No!
Ginny pulled yet another dress out of Hermione's wardrobe.
No, 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 definitely no.
She held up the dress from Bill and Fleur's wedding.
Maybe.
No, Hermione said from her position at the windowsill. Ginny had dragged her straight up the dorm after breakfast on Saturday to look at suitable party clothes. Ginny eyed the dress, head tilted.
We could lop off the sleeves, change the colour, load neckline. No, you're right. Wait a minute.
She tossed the dress aside and held up a red skirt.
This will do,
she said, shortening the hem with a wave of her wand.
I have a great top for this. 1 second.
Ginny pulled out a dark gold hearted top.
Perfect.
She looked at Hermione mischievously.
For your date tonight.
Hermione shook her head. It's not a date, and if I show up in that, it will look like a date, and I'm having enough trouble with Ron. Ginny laughed.
You could show up in a Weasley sweater and he'd think it's a date. My brother, he's a bit thick. And what about the party? You want all those glossy Slytherins outshining you?
Looking out the window of the Quidditch pitch, Hermione considered this. She really didn't.
Oh,
Ginny said, pulling out another dress.
And look what I'll be wearing.
Hermione blinked. The gauzy material in Ginny's hand was a shocking green.
We have to be welcoming to our guests, don't we?
Ginny went on, holding the wisp of clothes to herself in the mirror.
You are certainly embracing inter-house unity, Hermione said. I'm considering it,
Ginny answered wickedly.
Ron will hate it. Another plus,
Ginny said, and Hermione couldn't help but laugh with her. Hermione spent the rest of the day in the library, not even going to the Great Hall for dinner, since she'd be dining later with Ron. She almost lost track of time reading potion failures and fatalities through the ages. Fascinating. Who knew that a person could be sucked into a potion like that? Maybe Slughorn would let her develop some ideas after school. The fiducia had whetted her appetite. She even toyed with the idea of asking Malfoy to assist, but no, that wouldn't do. He'd just try to take over. Bossy people were so annoying. Returning to her dormitory, Hermione walked into total chaos. Lavender had spotted Ginny's dress hanging from the wardrobe door and hit the roof, since she'd planned to wear green herself to entice a certain hard-to-get Slytherin. Ginny refused to change her plans, contending that it would take more than a Slytherin colour to beg a Malfoy.
Face it, Lav,
Ginny lectured, pointing an empty hanger at her roommate.
And I say this as a friend. Malfoy has always had a very specific type. Slutty, gorgeous, rich, pureblood, bitch. And just because none of them will talk to him right now doesn't mean he'll take up with a Gryffindor. He might be down, but he'll come up on top. People like that always do. Give it a year, and Astoria will be begging for an invite to the manor. I don't want to marry him, Ginny, Lavender went. He's just so handsome. You want to sneak around the castle corners with him? Ginny asked. Because that's all you'll get at most. Sounds pretty bleak to me.
Sounded pretty bleak to Hermione, too. She didn't say a word, just dropped off her books and left to take a shower to avoid hearing any more. Leave it to Ginny to sum up everything unsuitable about Malfoy in a few trenchant sentences. The redhead's years of pinning after Harry had left her with a very cynical view of men. Still, Malfoy did kind of defy easy analysis. And Lavender knew little about men, too. Something about Malfoy was reeling her in. Hermione considered this, as she combed detangling solution through her hair. He didn't appear interested, but really, his personality was such a Russian nesting doll. Who knew what the man really thought? If Hermione had to guess, she'd said Lavender inspired some very thin, kind streak in the man. Lavender was so needy. She could feed off one short burst of Malfoy megawatt attention for days. Hermione had seen the man in action, and it could be blinding. It must be on your person. It isn't. I don't believe you. Hermione frowned at herself in the bathroom's steamy mirror. Stop it, you should be thinking about Ron. But she was sick of thinking about Ron. Like Ginny, she'd spent too much time thinking about a boy with too little result. She was simply tapped out. She had to tell Ron. She had to tell him tonight. Lavender saw reason at last and laid out her purple lace dress. Hermione donned her skirt and top, and Ginny helped her tame her hair. Well, not tame, but at least contain, twisting the curls up and firmly attaching them with a large gold and ruby clip. Perfect, she thought, looking in the mirror. The very picture of an unsuitable Gryffindor. She even transformed the beads on her extendable bag into red and gold. Hermione shook the little bag, listening to the echoes. Last time I used this bag, it contained a whole library, plus a painting of Phineas Nicholas Black. She and Ginny exchanged a grimace. Neither liked to think about those days when Hermione, Harry, and Ron had been on the run. Lavender fingered a deep, bite-shaped scar behind her ear and sighed. Ginny finally pronounced Hermione ready for her grand entrance, sending her down the staircase alone. It was a wasted effort, since Ron wasn't there, but she attracted a fair number of looks and low whistles. Then she cooled her high heels for a good 20 minutes before Ron clambered down the boys' stairs, claiming Quidditch practice ran along. He looked surprisingly spruced up, actually, his long hair brushing the collar of his dark blue shirt. It was odd seeing Ron in something other than a rumpled uniform, Quidditch jersey, or Weasley sweater.
"Ginny should have been up there,"
he told Hermione as she struggled into her cloak unaided.
"We developed this new strategy with the chasers."
Ron wanted to take the Marauder's Passage to Honeyduke's cellar, but Hermione didn't fancy wobbling through a tunnel in heels, so they headed down to the castle entrance to catch a carriage to Hogsmeade. Ron kept up the Quidditch chatter as they descended the marble staircase into the entrance hall.
"It's a variation of the Hawkshead formation where—"
The double doors leading to the great hall were tightly shut. The hall itself had emptied after dinner. Malfoy was standing by the doors with a woman draped in green. She was nearly as tall as he, and her blonde hair glittered with diamonds. Hermione halted, wrapping her dark red cloak more tightly round herself as she recognized the delicate profile. Narcissa Malfoy. The elegant witch laid a black-gloved hand, topped with a square emerald ring, on her son's shoulder. Malfoy was frowning with concern, and Narcissa placed her other hand over one of his clenched fists. "Go on, Draco dear," Narcissa said. "I'll wait here for you." Ron recognized Lady Malfoy as well.
"Well, look at that," he said gleefully. "Only a week, and Malfoy already needs his mummy."
His voice carried easily in the hall, and Malfoy looked over at them, his frown replaced with dark fury, then turned away. "And how many oars have you sent Molly so far, Ronald?" Hermione asked, equally loud, quoting his last letter to his mother. "Dear Mum, can you send over my broom-polishing kit and extra underwear?" The Malfoys ignored them. Ron glowered as they left the castle.
"You have a right sharp tongue this year, Hermione," he said.
It wasn't until they were seated upstairs at the Three Broomsticks above the noisier pub section that Ron dialed into Hermione's general appearance.
"You look hot,"
he whispered, running one hand up her bare arm while grabbing a breadstick with the other. Hermione leaned back into her chair. "Friends, Ronald, just friends." Ron waggled his eyebrows, looking much like Fred and George.
"For now, right?"
Hermione shook her head. "I don't see much chance of it changing."
"But you said—"
"I know, I was wrong." She shook her head again. "I love you, you know that, but not—"
"There is someone else, isn't there? Who is it?"
"No, Ronald."
"Then why not me for now?"
Ron put down the breadstick and took her hand.
"I know I'm rubbish at this stuff. I know you deserve better, but give me a chance."
He rubbed his thumb over the back of her hand. She pulled her hand away. "No, we can't date just because there aren't other people in our lives. How are we to find anybody else that way?"
"I don't want anybody else," Ron said stubbornly. "Since fourth year it's been you, even if I didn't know it. I don't know how to love anybody else."
"You can learn," Hermione said.
"I don't want to learn."
Hermione's patience was starting to fray. "Well, frankly, I'm not too keen on your way of loving me anyway. Your idea of love is to pass judgment on every little thing I do. And Godric, help me if you don't understand it or resent it in some way." Ron's face grew dark.
"Why, excuse me for caring. Who else is there? Not one bloke in this school is good enough for you. And maybe I'm not either, but are you really going to throw all this away?"
"What's the all this you speak of?" Hermione asked, waving her hand between them. "We hardly spent any time together."
"Because you're always in a sodding library."
"You're always on the Quidditch pitch. You'll never pass your notes if you don't study."
"I'll be fine if you just help me."
Hermione glared at him over her butterbeer glass. "I don't have hours to walk you through your assignments, Ronald. I have my own work, and maybe I'd like to do something else with my free time, like brew some experimental potions. And I want to go on dates, real dates, mind you, not just sit around the Gryffindor common room waiting for you to finally take me to dinner."
"Practice ran along Merlin's balls. I thought I'd lose you to Harry if I lost you to anyone. Now you're going to throw me over to play the field? Hermione Granger going around with just any guy? You're really going to stoop to that? What will people say?"
"That's enough, Ronald," she said, clasping her hands on her lap to stop them trembling. "I'm not some war-harrowing goddess or genius brain. So what if I'm a little reckless? I deserve a little fun, and I don't need you looking over my shoulder."
"What? You're going to be reckless with men? One isn't good enough for you?"
Ron's face was red now, and his mouth had a very ugly twist. She blinked at him, considering the question.
"Well," he prodded. "Hermione?"
"I don't know," she said. "Maybe."
"All right, then,"
he said, throwing down his napkin and standing.
"I'll leave you to it. You can pick up some right good prospects here. You're certainly dressed for it."
Hermione's hands clenched. "You're disgusting."
"Don't think I'll take you back after some bloke treats you like shit either," he snapped, wagging a finger down at her. "All men are like that, you know."
"I'm counting on that," she hissed up at him. Ron shook his head.
"I knew it. My mum was right about you all along."
Shrugging into his wool cloak, he turned and left the upstairs landing. Hermione turned in her chair to watch his bright red head move through the crowd and out of the door. "I won't cry. This is what I wanted. I won't cry." After the row with Ron and the cold walk back to Hogwarts by herself, the last thing Hermione wanted to do was slog down to the dungeons and collect Slughorn's contribution to the party. But she had given her word, so she wrapped her cloak more tightly around her and headed towards the potion classroom. Slughorn's contribution turned out to be a bottle of good fire whiskey, and Hermione now considered the time well spent. She was certainly ready for something stronger than butterbeer. She also took the opportunity to chat with Slughorn about experimental potions, and the potions master was enthusiastic.
"As a professor, of course I cannot officially condone experimental potions," he said with a wink. "However, if you would like to brew a bit of something for extra credit, there's a splendid little potions lab beyond the storage cupboard."
Hermione smiled her thanks and left, stuffing the fire whiskey bottle into her beaded bag. On the 7th floor, she ducked into a prefect's bathroom, password courtesy of Ginny, to survey the damage from hours of hiking along dusty paths, winding stairways, and musty corridors. Her hair had held up surprisingly well, but she took the time to freshen her makeup and place a cool washcloth on the back of her neck. The prospect of facing a common room full of Slytherins and Gryffindors felt overwhelming. Well, she had to make an appearance. People were probably wondering about her, and she wouldn't let Ron scare her away. "Charity and love," she told Fat Lady with a smile.
"Very good, dear,"
the portrait said, and swung open. The common room was packed with people. Nearly all the Gryffindor 7th and 8th years were there, and some suspiciously younger-looking students as well. The scene was spiced with a sprinkling of 8th-year Slytherins, the men in suits, the women in sheathed dresses, with jewels in their smooth tresses. The Gryffindors partied in everything from jeans and t-shirt to dress robes.
"Hermione!"
Ginny shouted, charging over. Hermione blinked at her best friends as she shed her cloak. Ginny's dress was more than a little short, and was that blazer beanie lingering behind her? Ron was nowhere to be seen. Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas were handing out drinks, and Neville was dancing with Romilda Vane, who wore a red dress as short as Ginny's. Dennis Creevy stood half in the shadow, glowering at the Slytherins. "I brought a contribution from Slughorn," Hermione said, pulling out the bottle of fire whiskey. Sabine reached out a long arm and plucked it from her hand.
Octans, very nice."
Sabines placed the bottle on the table and opened it with a tap of his wand. 3 fat glasses appeared in his other hand.
"You must forgive Sabini here," Ginny said to Hermione. "He likes to play the host even when I reserve the common room and you bring the liquor."
"You too provide the beauty as well,"
Zabini said as he handed around drinks.
"Cheers."
"Ron came through early like a freight train," Ginny went on. "Tried to run down Malfoy, but Malfoy wasn't having it. Malfoy took a surprisingly dim view of Ron leaving you at Hogsmeade to make your way back alone, and Ron took a dim view of being taught manners by Malfoy."
"Malfoy was here?" Hermione was surprised.
"He was," Zabini said. "Brought a lovely bottle of 1952 Soren Scotch, but few partook."
Ginny drained her drink.
"Malfoy left after that. Lavender's still moping."
Zabini refilled Ginny's glass.
"There is something to be said for Intel's unity. Gryffindors bring a certain energy to the festivities."
"And what do Slytherins bring, Zabini?" Hermione asked.
"Decent liquor."
Hermione nodded. "Help me up there, will you?" she asked. Zabini responded immediately, setting down his glass and helping her to stand on the couch. Whistles broke out among the crowd. "To inter-house unity," Hermione said loudly, raising her glass. "To new friends and old." A sea of hands holding bottles and glasses instantly shot onto the air, followed by clicking and cheering. It was a lovely sight, really. Ginny and Zabini were now dancing by the staircase, and Neville was talking to Pansy Parkinson, who wore a dress of watery green silk and 2 jade sticks in her dark hair. A silver flash caught the edge of Hermione's eyesight, and she turned to see Draco Malfoy enter through the portrait hall, dressed in a black suit, shirt, and tie. He looked heartily around the room, brushing an invisible speck off his arm, and one eyebrow rose slightly when he saw Hermione standing on the sofa. He tipped the Scotch bottle in his hand toward her, a subtle greeting. Lavender immediately rushed over to meet him. Sipping her drink, Hermione watched the pair silently, adding her own dialect to the scene. Lavender.
"Oh, Draco, you're here again!"
Malfoy. Yes, I'm completely baffling this year.
Lavender. "Oh, Draco, you're so funny!"
Malfoy. I'm really not, and I rarely appreciate real humour in ancient rune essays.
Lavender. "Oh, Draco, tell me what a rune is."
Malfoy. I'll do better than that. I'll take you to Malfoy Manor, where unpaid house elves paint the entrance in runes, spelling out "Elves of the world, unite for better conditions."
"What are you doing?"
Ginny hissed up at her.
What? Hermione looked down from her perch, startled.
"You're staring at Malfoy and Lavender and cackling dementedly," Ginny said.
Her hair was mussed, her eyes were bright, and Zabini was right behind her.
"I just think it's funny," Hermione said, sipping her drink. The fire whiskey seemed to smoulder in her veins. "Here comes Scene 2.
"What are you— Oh!"
Ginny turned to see Ron lurching drunkenly down the staircase.
"You Weasleys cannot hold your liquor,"
Hermione said, taking a larger sip. "A common trait of most Gryffindors," Zabini said.
"We'd better head to Malf," Ginny said. "Come on, Blaze."
"Yes, go on, Blaze," Hermione said with a grin. The Slytherin raised an eyebrow at her, then trailed Ginny as if he'd planned to go that way all along. Hermione looked back at the portrait hall, but Malfoy and Lavender were gone. Parvati Patil had dragged Lavender away, and Malfoy, she saw, now leaned against the wall tapestry opposite Hermione's sofa. He stood alone below a flickering torch, shining in the reflected glow, no one else daring to enter his ring of yellow light. Malfoy had a glass in his hand and his bottle on the table beside him, but the grey eyes holding hers were stone sober.
"Need a little help?" asked a voice below her. Hermione nearly tumbled off the sofa. Harry? No. The man below her had similar green eyes, dancing with mischief, and his black hair stuck up on end. But this Harry was immaculately dressed in a black suit with an emerald shirt and tie. His messy hair was an artful arrangement, and there was no glasses on his long nose. "Theodore not," Hermione said faintly. She didn't know how the Slytherin was returning this year. "Theo, please," he said with a smile. "Inter-house unity, after all."
"Hermione, then," she said absently.
The man looked awfully chipper for someone whose family was weaving baskets in Azkaban. Maybe that was why he was chipper. Nod Senior had been recently executed. Nod's imprisoned uncles were a pack of rabid dogs. Despite such a background, no whisper of scandal had ever clung to Theo, who claimed ignorance of everything. Hermione doubted that, but you can't help your family. Theo had managed to avoid the worst of the war, packing himself off to his grandmother in Germany during 7th year. The Slytherin was looking amused now, and Hermione realized she'd been staring down at him while she mentally reviewed his dossier. She blushed. "Welcome back to Hogwarts, Theo," she said politely. "When did you arrive?" "This morning." He looked around the crowded common room. "Perfect timing." His eyes met hers. "And here I am by the sofa. Again, perfect timing. I was going to look for you anyway, Hermione." "Why?" He waved a wide hand, studded with a silver and onyx signet ring. "Hosts of reason, most of which I won't admit to," he said. "But you're the brightest witch of your age. Why would I seek you out?" "Because you're a week late to school and need to catch up," she asked. "Why not ask Zabini?" Theo smirked. "Hopeless." "Parkinson?" "Even more hopeless." Hermione grinned. "Malfoy?" "The Dark Prince himself. I'd sooner fail." Theo's smile widened. "Let me help you down, Hermione. I'm getting a crick in my neck looking up at you." "Welcome to my world." Hermione hated being short. "Thank you. I like your world." Hermione glanced over at Malfoy again. Yes, still there, still alone, still drinking, and still staring. Definitely time to get off this sofa. She held out her hand, but Theo set down his drink and grabbed her around the waist with both hands instead, setting her down with easy strength. He was broader framed than Harry, with a deeper chest. His faint 5 o'clock shadow made him look too old to be a student.
Theo kept one hand on her waist, and the music and laughter flowed around them. "One dance," he said, taking her right hand, "for inter-house unity." Hermione laughed, and suddenly it felt very natural to be dancing with Theodore Nott in Gryffindor's common room, giggling at his quips and trying not to spill her drink. Maybe this year would be fun after all. Alas, it couldn't last. They danced and twirled through a few songs, and then Theo spun her around, and they almost crashed into Ron, standing alone and rigid in front of the boys' staircase. He glared at Theo.
"Get away from her,"
he said. To be continued.
Thank you for listening to The Gloriana Set by ThebeMoon, read by LMX Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on AO3, YouTube, or Spotify.